Does he have the show notes? Does he have the show notes? Aaron!
Okay, go again. My camera fell. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. All right, let's talk about what's in the news, Will.
Alright, what's in
So
the news?
Biden spoke. President Biden did a speech about the unrealistic expectation of police officers to act as counselors during confrontations.
Jesus. Okay.
He also, he stated that there would be additional mental health resources for the 100,000 people who die of overdose each year in the US.
Pre or post?
That's a weird sentence I wrote. It's probably not additional resources for the people who have died. It's probably
Yeah, I get you. It seems they're trying to take the pressure off the police force by getting more people involved on the mental health front, essentially.
Now this is good. I think this is a right move, but I have very, very low expectations that it will be executed properly.
Yeah, especially from the admin side of it. It's unlikely that it's going to be 100,000 people helping the police officers. It's going to be like 10,000 people helping and then 90,000 administration people trying to organize it.
Yeah, oh yeah, probably something like that. So they're starting a new project. It's called the Community Oriented Policing Services.
Okay.
And that the acronym they got there is the COPS. Which is that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But the program is designed to build legitimacy and trust in communities, to address violent crime, to combat hate and extremism.
Okay.
So building legitimacy and trust in communities, everyone noticed that there's been a little bit of a problem there where the police and the communities they police haven't really been on the same page in recent times, to understate it massively.
Yeah. The violent rhetoric.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I find interesting, though, is they say to combat hate and extremism. Well, hate is pretty abstract. Now, I have a feeling that they mean hate crimes, and they didn't want to say hate crime because maybe that's too specific, or like for the statement. I don't know what it is, but to combat hate, it's too abstract. And extremism, it's also too abstract.
Hate towards what? The cops?
And
yeah.
Well, this is the thing. It's too abstract. And I have a feeling that it's not going to be effective because of this.
Okay.
I have a feeling that they're gonna create a new government department that does a bunch of everything but doesn't really do anything well.
Yeah.
And so I think we should talk about extremists, because there was the recent Buffalo shooting, and I'm not really sure that the current people who would be chosen to be the experts by a program like that will be the right people to handle people like the Buffalo shooter.
Okay, that's interesting.
I actually think, they tend to be in a little bit of an ideological battle. And I have a feeling that any legitimacy and trust that could be built between this community of experts who's going to be helping these people and the people who don't really want the help from the people they consider their enemies, I just have a feeling it's not going to work. I don't even know if well, here's the thing. Extremists, like the Buffalo shooter, tend to be socially isolated. One of the troubles with them is they're hard to find. They're not reaching out.
Yeah.
So
it's like good luck try even getting the people that might not, like as you said before, it's like the people that have the skills to help can't even find these people. Like me.
And here's the thing with the Buffalo shooter too. He was already on an FBI watch list.
Was he?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
So what more do you need? Like, I don't know. To me, I'd be looking at why the people on watch lists are able to commit attacks, perhaps, and not be noticed. Like, to me, a watch list indicates they're watching these people, but maybe the list has grown so long that they can't actually watch them.
Yeah, it's like, when are they watching him? From 9 to 11 in the morning? Like, is that like they check in every day and he just managed to slip them?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but we know that this guy during the attack. So let's talk about the attack and what we currently know.
Mm.
And it's going to be very similar to the Dave Chappelle incident for a little while, where a bunch of things are reported that don't end up being true. So we're just going to talk about what we know for sure.
It's actually funny that you
Right.
mentioned this after the Dave Chappelle incident and us talking about violent rhetoric, and then literally a couple days later, a shooting happens. Like,
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
bizarre.
On the release schedule, it's going to look like we're following along the news, but we're actually preempting it a little bit, which
Yeah.
so
Okay.
current reports at the time of filming show that he killed 10 people.
Mm.
They show that it was a racially motivated attack, specifically targeted towards black people. He wore body armor and live streamed the attack, and he surrendered to the police and was taken into custody. That's all we need to say for the purpose of this episode, and I'm not going to say any more because with the Dave Chappelle attack, there was a bunch of things said that ended up being not true. Let's just not run the risk of repeating anything.
Yeah.
But with that caveat in place, let's talk about what has been reported.
Okay. Which is always interesting.
Yeah. It's always funny. So it's been reported the shooter was right-wing. He was a right-wing Republican.
Okay.
He was an authoritarian left-wing. He was an eco-fascist. He was a furry. He was a member of 4chan. That he was radicalized by Tucker Carlson. He was a communist and was deathly afraid of COVID.
What the fuck? Why are all these things relevant? Well, I guess they are, but it's like, maybe he doesn't even know what a political party is.
Well, he's also an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any 18-year-olds that are sophisticated in their understanding of politics.
To that degree, anyway.
Yeah, let alone someone who could make sense of those positions and hold them all.
Yeah, all at once, you know? But anyway.
So what, you know what's happening? The things that they're reporting are more relevant to the people reporting than they are to the truth of the story, whether or not they are true at all.
Okay.
The people who don't like the right-wing people are saying he's right-wing. The people who don't like the left-wing people are saying he's left-wing.
I see.
There's one on the list here, an eco-fascist. That one was reported this morning, and I was a little surprised by that one. You know, I got the article here. I should probably actually read the quote.
Was he like 10% eco-fascist and they're only just figuring it out now? They're like, he actually cares about the environment and he doesn't like racial people. He's a furry, you know, like he's like 10%, 10%, 10%, and they're finally cracking the last 10%, which is eco-fascist.
They're probably going through his social media somehow or whatever, and they're probably looking at everything he's liked, everything he's posted, you know, everything he's shared. Yeah. And they're just putting labels on it all. Because the people who want to call him a fascist, for instance, they want him to be a fascist because they're against fascists.
Yeah.
So if he's ever said anything that made it appear that he was in any way pro-fascism, they're going to use that as evidence and call him that. Yeah. Although apparently the term eco-fascist comes from the manifesto he released, but this is what it said in the article that was reporting this.
Okay.
So the suspected perpetrator of the deadly shooting in Buffalo, New York on Saturday may have been the latest mass killer to be motivated by a growing fixation of right-wingers, environmental degradation, and the impact of overpopulation.
Fucking hell.
Now, there's a lot of language. The latest mass killer to be motivated by environmental degradation that's a right-winger. I haven't even heard of right-wingers killing people over the environment. I thought that they were anti-climate change and all this sort of, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're like fucking keep the factories up, you know, keep doing oil, you know.
Well, that's what they were put forward for. Like, and they're supposed to be pro-coal, and now we're apparently all the right-wingers have been killing people over the environment because this is the latest mass killer, which to me that seems like it's biased reporting. Although this is a problem with it. Mass shooters are typically very, very weird people.
Yeah,
That's what the group contains. So it could be biased reporting, or it could just be an honest reflection of a very weird person. We're not going to know.
yeah. Well, like even if he, even if they're pulling these things up, it's like it could just be chaos, paranoia, like he's like trying to please all his friends at once kind of nonsense, like living multiple identities. He's Roxy the furry, he's fucking himself, and then 3 other accounts on Discord, like
Oh yeah, and you
yeah,
can expect that of an 18-year-old in general too,
yeah,
because they hold positions for, yeah, like you said, to impress people. Then as soon as they're challenged, they just drop them,
yeah, and
pick a different thing.
they do it just to kind of find their way and find who they are, and like sucks that he went to the extreme and had to like, you know, act on a
Well, yeah,
belief.
that's what's very sad about it. Is I honestly think that if you're 18, don't don't kill anyone.
Yeah.
Especially if you're young and you're doing it for political reasons.
Yeah, like
Make that a rule in your life.
We said earlier in one of the podcasts, keep your political affairs out of your like. I'm probably botching this, but like, act on an individual level for fuck's sake. It's like then work up. Don't start at the top and come down. Like fuck me.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk more about how confused these motivations are as we go on. But God, anyway, we should push forward. Anyway, we got to get through these notes.
Okay.
So the first part of the confusion in the reporting comes from the fact that he released a manifesto supposedly saying his reasoning behind the shooting, but pages were copied and pasted from the Christchurch shooters manifesto, with certain words swapped out for more timely references. It's not clear whether this 18-year-old shooter produced a semi-plagiarized work of scholarship that laid out his motivations, but the copy and pasting indicates both a certain level of laziness and that these shooters are of a type.
Okay. Maybe he idolized that shooter,
I think so, because that shooter seems to hold the beliefs that this new Buffalo shooter is being presented as having. I think the Christchurch shooter actually really believed that stuff, but it's very hard to reconcile all the supposed beliefs of this Buffalo shooter. Like, it's not even clear that if the Christchurch shooter and the Buffalo shooter were in a room that they would get along.
Yeah, well, depends on which identity the Buffalo shooter's going to take on.
Yeah.
See, it's hard to say if he's a product of his own thinking or if he's a product of a bunch of people that don't want to be involved anymore.
Yeah, I think that's right. So here we go. In the manifesto, it said that he cited the Great Replacement theory, which this is where we get into these are the kind of ideas we can't be tripped up by if we're going to be good people.
Okay.
The Great Replacement theory states that white people are being replaced in our democratic societies by third world people of different races who are persuaded with welfare and higher standards of living to vote outside of the interests of a predominantly white society. The theory also states that white people are being encouraged to breed outside of their race by movies, marketing, and politicians in an effort to replace us. So it's half conspiracy, half ideology. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So apparently, I haven't actually seen the clip. I don't actually really care for this sort of stuff, so I did pretty lax research on it. This one was a video, so I didn't watch it. Tucker Carlson cited this theory during a segment on Fox News, apparently, and hence why he's being paired with the Buffalo shooter. So people are saying that Tucker Carlson radicalized this guy.
Fucking hell.
And
Even the
as a
theory
result
sounds
of that,
crazy. But anyway, you keep going.
yeah. Well, they're saying that Tucker Carlson is responsible for the attack. And then I saw as of this morning, Tucker Carlson's done a segment defending himself, probably at least partly in response to the following tweets from yesterday. So this one is a tweet. I'll just read it out. We'll put it up on the screen.
Yep.
Charles Manson was not present at the murder scenes and did not commit actual murders, but was found guilty because of his influence over his followers. How's that any different from Tucker Carlson, who heavily influenced the Buffalo shooter with his replacement theory? FBI announces that they're investigating today's mass shooting in Buffalo as racially motivated violent extremism. The shooter left a manifesto citing Tucker Carlson's white replacement theory as his motive. Now, they say the shooter left a manifesto citing Tucker Carlson's white replacement theory. They didn't say that he cited Tucker Carlson by name. They're saying he spoke about a theory that Tucker Carlson spoke about as well.
See, that's...
And then it says...
Sorry, that doesn't sit well with me.
Retweet like if you think that Tucker Carlson must be investigated.
Well, I'll specifically say right now for the Recreate Meaning podcast, if you're listening to this and you think that the right replacement theory is the right thing to do, then don't act on it. But anyway, moving on.
And then the next one says Tucker Carlson is responsible for what happened in Buffalo today. 30,000 likes. You know, these are all tweets that got a lot of likes, and they all indicate that there's a certain flaw in the thinking. So Tucker Carlson didn't invent the great replacement theory. It's been posted and shared online for many years. If by mentioning it on television, he became at least partly responsible for the actions of the shooter, then the person who mentioned the idea to Tucker Carlson is partly responsible for Tucker Carlson sharing it on television. And like, I hope you see the flaw in this. If you try to persecute based on ideology, you end up in these chains of who said what to who, and it doesn't really work. Individual responsibility is lost.
Yeah. It's the zone. It's like the zone of what you can actually do, and it's like the Buffalo shooter acted on his own intention. It'd be different if that guy actually spoke to him, you know, but he didn't.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like if I picked up a book and I read and I was like, okay, sweet, I'm going to go and be a suicide bomber now. You know, it's like that's my fault, not the books.
You know, well, I think so. Like, and it's often the case young people fall into these ideologies just because they can't outthink the ideology.
Yeah, absolutely.
You kind of almost need to build up an ideological immune system, and we'll talk about how to do that. But first, we'll just talk about what an ideology is. So, ideology, a system of ideas and ideals, especially one which forms the basis of economic or political theory and policy. So, it's like a little system, and it can spread like a virus, mind to mind. And once people have the ideology, if they can't outthink it, it infects their it infects their entire being.
In saying that, we've already warned people in the previous episodes, like 2 previous episodes before this, that having flexible thinking rather than like strict thinking it maps straight onto this. It's like, do not, like, an ideology or an idea can only go so far, and anywhere from that you end up doing things like shooting 10 people in a fucking wherever the fuck this shooting was, you know. It's awful.
It's really not good, and there is a rich history of ideologies causing trouble. So if if this particular shooting maybe doesn't resonate, we could talk about many times ideologies caused a lot of trouble.
Dude, wars, etc. Like, it just goes on.
Well, it can go all the way up to war. Actually, there's a point I was going to put in the notes, and I didn't have a spot for.
Well, now's the time.
The fact that the shooter was taken alive indicates something.
Okay.
He surrendered to the police. That indicates something. And this was one of the things with a shooter in Norway quite a few years ago now. But the shooter in Norway surrendered to the police after shooting, I think it was a school camp. It was the particular mass shooter picking something that will get a lot of media attention by using their capacity for evil to come up with just the most egregious thing they could possibly do.
Yeah.
He chose children. I believe they were like teens. I can't remember the details.
He did something horrible, basically.
Yeah. He surrendered to the police, and he also somehow got a message out to the public. And basically he said, oh, he was actually citing the Great Replacement Theory too, when I think about it. So this isn't even the first shooter who's done this.
Fucking hell.
Like, there was the Christchurch shooter, and now there's before that there was the Norway one, and I'm sure there's been others in between, because I don't really follow the news on this, but
sounds like a pretty toxic way of thinking, but
yeah, well, it is, yeah. He said that he surrendered to the police because he didn't want to die at the scene of the shooting, because he thought that he would be arrested, put in jail for a few years, but then we'd all come round to his way of thinking.
Ooh.
And then he would be released from jail, and he would be a hero in society.
The resurrection story. He thought, fucking
yeah, that's
hell.
what he thought he was in. Yeah, and
fuck.
There are people saying the Buffalo shooter thought the same thing, but there's no primary source material to go off. I don't know. But this is the thing. These people who have these ideologies, they think that they're on the right side, and often they think people are disagreeing with them just because they're early. It's very, very dangerous.
See, there's many other ways of thinking like this. This is just a prime example that's current, and it's like, you might not even be running ideologies that you know. Well, I run some that I don't even realize. But anyway.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. You got to be rigorous to get rid of ideology, and I don't know if anyone's successfully done it ever. You see it all the time. Sometimes a thinker that you respect will just say something ideological, and you'll just go,
He caught in a trap. He didn't think that one through all the way. He acted before. Yeah. It's like anger's full of them. Anger's full of ideologies.
Oh yeah. Anger and ideology go together so well. So it's your personal responsibility to be better than any ideology which attempts to infect your mind. You're a danger to society if exposure to a certain idea can radicalize you. If you can, you should use your own reasoning to help others with their ideological struggles as well. So there's a thing in philosophy where they say you can't derive an ought from an is.
Okay.
And this is one of the, I think, Enlightenment debates that was raging. But there's facts, and we'll say everything that's a fact is an is. And then hopefully my diagram shows up relatively well here. But these are is's, and for is's to be true, they're all connected to other is's.
Yeah.
Facts, you can take a pathway through the facts. There's no problem at all with that.
A logical train of thinking that leads to from one thing to another, and you can derive practical things out of it. And
it doesn't even have to be necessarily like the logic should follow, but you should be able to say that is a true thing, and you can go into debates about truth. But like, I'm looking at a tree right now. I'm looking at a tree. It's an is. There is a tree. I'm not. Yeah. This is the kind of level an is should be on. It should just be very, very, very high, very, 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 very high. Yeah, high probability of being correct. Now we go into ideologies.
Oh my god!
I know it gets a few circles, but what we got in relation to the is's, there's oughts.
Okay.
And if this is true, then this is what I think ought to be. And they say you can't derive an ought from an is.
Okay.
So just because something is doesn't mean that you know what to do about it.
Mm.
So all the ones I've done in red, they are, let's say they're not is's, they're oughts.
Yeah.
And oughts have a lower probability of being correct. Like maybe just because something is, you don't know what to do about it. And then if you get a bunch of oughts together and they form a system, you get yourself an ideology, and the ideology kind of grafts itself onto the is's.
Mm.
And you'll see it when people are talking. They'll talk about what is, and then they'll talk about what to do about it, and they won't even differentiate between the two.
Yeah.
Like
it's almost like the lines between fact and opinion get blurred in a sense in the person's mind, and I think it's probably easier to make that mistake than it comes on to be, but it's like it's dangerous.
oh
You know?
yeah, and it's partly a function of having to interact with the world.
Yeah.
Like there are things, and then there's you, and you got to do something about it. You don't have perfect knowledge, so now and again you make small mistakes. It's just what it is.
Mm. But
And it's
it's
very fun.
about how
Ideology isn't
it's about what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to say that it's about what you choose to act upon with the knowledge that you're given. It's like you've got to be sure before you act, otherwise people die.
Oh yeah, and there's another thing with ideologies where they kind of have almost like a gravity about them, where when there's one ideology, so there's is's and then there's an ought, and the ought's been picked up in a form of system of beliefs, and maybe it's beginning to be acted out in the world. Every time there's an action, sometimes, well, not every time, there can be winners and losers, and some people will think it's fair, some people will think it's unfair. Like someone else making an action will get the attention of other people, whether justified or unjustified. You got to interact with other people as part of the world.
Yeah.
But if a collection of people pick up an ideology and start acting on it, typically another ideology will emerge to battle the ideology that's kind of created this. I was trying to think of a good word for it. It's almost like a vacuum where everybody swaps over to one ideology, and it creates this kind of like this pressure differential, which kind of another ideology emerges to in an attempt to correct it.
Like balance out the kind of thinking where it's like hypothetically, if you say there's a 50-50 chance of picking individualist over multicultural or whatever, I'm not saying the right words here, individualism versus collectivist, it's like you could fit 50-50 in either one, but there's going to be like multiple different things that pull you in either direction to try and fight to get your attention. And I guess it's because a group of people can make an impact where one person cannot. So it's like it's a part of the people that are a part of that group to pull you in and try and convince you to do something about it, or adopt the beliefs or act in a certain way. And it's like, well, sometimes those groups can be serial killers online, influencing you to shoot up a place, and it's like you gotta be careful about that.
Yeah. You got to be very careful where you land, because God, well, anyway, here's the next part of the diagram.
Oh God.
So because of the is's run down the middle still.
Yeah.
There was one ideology to the left, and now we'll say that there's a competing ideology that's emerged in response. And now we got blue circles.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Where the competing ideologies get really, really confused is they start using each other's circles as is's.
Oh
and
my
this
God.
this is a tricky point, but we're going to see some examples and you'll understand it. But when the people who are in the red ideology start looking at the things that the blue ideology has put forward as what ought to be, and the people in the red ideology say, look at what they think ought to be, and then they start collecting evidence that what the blue ideology says ought to be is actually happening, they start saying that the blue ideology's oughts are is's, and that their red ideology, they need to start taking action as well in an effort to stop what this competing ideology has, put into action, when really both ideologies are built off of the what is black circle line. So this is
they're egging each other on to spiral out of control.
They really are. And once all the red ideology people have fully adopted and understood the blue people's principles, and they're starting to act against them, what you get is this disconnection between that is line. All of a sudden, those black circles that were used to build the foundations, they kind of all get swapped out for just a bunch of nonsense. So,
plus those black circles get updated, so it's like, unless the person's really following the central principles, they're not gonna get the new updated information. It's like, we could, I guess that's why you see Parliament arguing about old issues sometimes, I guess. It's important for some people, but not important for others. I digress.
Well, with this in mind, we're going to join the ideological battle now, because the Great Replacement theory has been in an ideological battle with the anti-racist people.
Okay.
And what we got to do is we got to note that anti-racism, so it's a reserved term here, it doesn't mean what the words imply it means. It's got a new meaning that's been assigned to those words.
Okay.
So anti-racism does not mean don't be racist.
Okay.
Anti-racism is the name of another particular ideology, which means something more like attack racism.
Okay.
That's more of what it means. So,
do you think it means that in the modern sense, or do you mean like?
Well, I think what they mean by it is, if there's a racist, kill them, but they don't do it because it's illegal.
Okay, yeah. So, like, the extreme version, like, it literally, you got both extremes here. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, yeah. In the way that the Great Replacement people have their mass shooters, the anti-racists have their own extremists. I don't know if I can cite a mass shooter, but I know that there was a lot of stuff that happened at protests recently, which, a lot of people's heads being caved in with cinder blocks and stuff like that, which,
just awful shit.
Yeah, blood on people's hands on both sides.
Yeah.
So there's a very annoying thing ideological people do, where they pretend when they're on these fringe beliefs they've never heard of one another. And they're doing it now with, like, they're pretending that the Great Replacement theory people are brand new, and it's not true at all. So we're going to look at an article from 2018. It's written during Stacey Abrams' campaign for the state of Georgia. Stacey Abrams is part of the anti-racist crowd. The author has used the language of the Great Replacement ideology against them, saying that their explicit goal is to replace white nationalists. So this is an antagonistic article. Oh, first we should just clear up a word: nationalist. A person who identifies with their own nation and vigorously supports its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations.
Fucking hell.
So there's a good example of nationalism in India at the moment, where India is not going to be exporting wheat for a while because they need to feed their own people before they worry about the rest of the world. They don't care if other people in other countries are starving. They're going to focus on themselves. And one of the things with nationalism, sometimes you get people who are doing things that are obviously wrong in the name of nationalism, and sometimes you get people who are looking after the interests of their own nation, who are called nationalists as a derogatory term, and it's often a little bit unclear whether or not.
Yeah, they all get raked in.
By case basis. Yeah.
Yeah, they all get raked in.
Okay, so this journalist, she's headlined the article designed to antagonize the Great Replacement people, headlined it, "We can replace them." That's the headline.
Fuck, that is also awful.
Oh yeah,
You know?
you know what she's doing? She's seeing the angry people, and she cites all the reasons why this is justified language. But what she's trying to do is she's trying to take these people and get them really angry.
Get them out acting, you know?
Yeah, it's an antagonistic article.
Yeah.
The reason it gets away with it is because some people say it's okay to antagonize members of the opposing ideology, and in this case, this is published in the New York Times. This is a major publication.
Yeah.
So it says, in Georgia, a chance to rebuke white nationalism. So it's okay to replace these people because they're white nationalists.
Mm.
And then they got a photo of Stacey Abrams. She's a black woman, just so you understand what the situation is. You can probably see why a black woman who's running for, I think it's governor of Georgia, would run into trouble with the white nationalists
in that state, because aren't they like south? You know, like they might be still in a town where it's pretty bad.
So the Venn diagram of white nationalist and white supremacist, it's got a bit of overlap.
Yeah.
So you can see why she's running into trouble, and that's why they're kind of going to war in the language here. But it says a quote from the governor. He said so the current governor, he's the guy they're saying is the white nationalist. He said he is concerned that if everyone eligible to vote in Georgia does, he will lose the election. Oh, one moment, I just got a parcel.
You're good. I'm just saying that's awkwardly awful on both sides, and I think this might be the reason I hate politics.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible.
Okay, but yeah,
so he said he's worried to lose, and she said, let's prove him right. And then that's not so bad, because she just said, let's prove him right. He'll lose if we all vote. Everyone in a democracy having their voice, we sort of champion that thing.
Yeah.
But then the journalist says, in a week, American voters can do to white nationalists what they fear most. Show them they're being replaced. So the journalist is trying to antagonize this group.
Yeah.
And this is around the time of the Norway shooting and all that. Like, this is not a past example that exists and I've highlighted it in response to an event that's happened 4 years later. This has been an ongoing thing forever.
Plus, the examples don't necessarily matter. It's all about the language and all about the discussion and all about the thinking, It's like we're trying to highlight the way that the thinking and the examples of how people have acted in the thinking have potentially caused negative outcomes.
And I got some more recent examples too, because these are just from the last sort of 48 hours. It's not hard to find good examples of antagonistic language being used. This is actually post-shooting too. This one's by a guy called Morgan J. Freeman, who isn't the Morgan Freeman, the old guy with the freckles who's got the cool voice.
Yeah.
This is the director of the movie American Psycho 2, so make of that what you will.
That's antagonistic talking, Aaron. Not joking.
He says, being anti-racist starts by admitting whiteness is a disease. And
sorry,
he said whiteness in quotation marks because what they say is that there's a certain culture that exists that emerged from European people, which is negative, and I don't know, they call it whiteness, which it's like if you use the inverted commas in an attempt not to offend white people, just don't call it whiteness. Like,
it's absolutely awful. I'm sorry.
I know they're awful people.
Replace the white word with any other culture. It's just awful flat.
They know what they're doing. They're trying to antagonize these people into a battle. That's what they want. So this kind of thinking in anti-racism really fuels the fears of the great replacement types.
Yeah.
saying whiteness is a disease implies that the world would be better if it was eradicated, which they're exactly playing into the language of the Great Replacement people. Just picture these diagrams of the opposing ideologies, and they're taking each other's bubbles and they're doing their best to create something which is antagonistic to the other side.
Yeah, I see exactly what you're talking about.
So both these groups are probably as ingrained as each other in our society, the Western society. Both are radical fringe ideas. They're not really mainstream ideas, they're on the fringe. And they're not going to take us where we want to go.
Yeah.
The difference is Great Replacement was an outsider idea, and anti-racism was an insider idea. So anti-racist principles were able to spread in institutions because institutions have diversity training and employee relations guides. They can tell you how to talk and how to act in a workplace.
Yeah.
And the anti-racist stuff is kind of like, it's kind of just attached itself to that like a parasite. And people like to pretend that it's not there, but it absolutely is. Like,
yeah.
that you hear the quiet little things people say to one another about other people, and it's very different than what the group consensus is. But these fringe ideas are absolutely there. Great Replacement was more of an more of an outsider idea.
Yeah.
It was the kind of thing you wouldn't say in a workplace. It was more something that was said in informal circles.
Which is why it can kind of fester, you know?
Yeah, and like I don't know. It just annoys me anyway.
I can see your thinking here. It's like if that thought, right, the never gets spoken about out loud, or if it gets spoken about out loud and you
get the vacuum almost.
Yeah, it never gets critically analyzed, so that person just sticks with it. It just in them, it's festering away, and it's like so hard to deal with,
Yeah, that's why I think it's going to be hard to find the extremists for these organizations that are being invented, because it's so psychological.
Yeah, I get you, and I see your point 100%.
So Great Replacement was an outsider idea. It wasn't really the kind of thing mentioned in polite society, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know a better way to say it.
Well,
but it got a moment.
Yeah, it got a moment.
It got a moment as an insider idea on Fox News when Tucker Carlson mentioned it. And that's why he's being attacked so relentlessly.
I honestly think that having these ideas spoken out loud gives us a chance to actually talk about them. But in saying that, I'm not advocating the talk of anything. I'm just saying that talking about them on the podcast is important because people should evaluate their own thinking and have other people evaluate it as well. Maybe us, maybe someone else. But I fucking hate the media for the misportrayal of a lot of things and the boxing of it all. It's just awful.
I swear, I don't know if it's true, because it's a memory in my head from high school and so many years ago, but I swear in our SOS class or whatever, the modern history, whatever it was, I think we did speak about the changing demographics of Australia and how white people are becoming more of a minority as time goes on, and will continue to do so, just as a response to the changing demographics. Now, I swear that we spoke about this.
I reckon we
I can't remember.
I can't remember. I always found that those classes were not engaging for me because I always felt like that was one-sided.
Yeah, they were weird classes.
I don't know. Like it might just be the inner transporting person in me. No.
Yeah. Okay. Move on. So some institutions are casting out anti-racist ideology. Netflix is the best example. They're currently going through a bit of a hard time, losing some subscribers. They're cutting the things that they think are harming their business. And they've can't. So, one thing, Netflix has a politically motivated workforce, which will sometimes go on strike and cause trouble for the company if the company tries to do what the political element of their workforce thinks is wrong. They did this with Dave Chappelle's special. A bunch of their employees protested and all this sort of stuff, like an in-office protest, which is, as someone who owns the company, would be something that annoys the hell out of you. That politics is ingrained in the workforce to the point where they don't release content that the customers are demanding.
Yeah.
So currently Netflix is looking to fire a bunch of people, and they seem to be specifically targeting the politically motivated employees because the CEO said that if you don't like the politics of this organization, you should quit. He said that the other day. And if they quit, the company doesn't have to pay them a severance package.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to fire them, but he wants them to quit.
Yeah.
He will probably fire them going into the future. But so Netflix has canceled 3 animated projects.
Okay.
One of them's called Anti-Racist Baby. And it was going to be a cartoon about a book written called Anti-Racist Baby, which we'll never see it now, so we can't judge it, but we have content from the book that it's from.
So bizarre to me, but anyway.
One passage from the book it says, anti-racist baby is bred, not born. So it's very rare that you find the selective breeding element highlighted so clearly. But the anti-racist ideology does have a selective breeding part to it, which, you don't breed people. Like, you don't breed them like they're horses. Like, you know what I mean?
The language there is a bit upsetting to my stomach, actually.
Yeah. And it says, anti-racist baby is raised to make society transform. So there's often a thing where they say that these anti-racist people are targeting children because they're easy targets for ideology. Because children, you get children to believe anything if a bunch of adults get together in a room, tell the children what to believe, and then if the children try to act out anything different, you punish them.
Yeah.
And then if the children do what you want them to do, you reward them. Like, it's classical ideological takeover of society. You get the children when they're young, before their brains are developed, and you make sure that their brains develop in a certain way that your ideas are ingrained so heavily that they just cannot break out of it.
That's another reason why I didn't like certain teachers at school. I think I always have a natural disposition to not take sides. And like, oh my fucking god. Dude, I just like hearing some of the things that were said during school, and I was just like, that is just awful. Like, it's just absolutely awful on both sides, and it's obviously ideology. Like,
yeah, oh yeah. So they were going to make this anti-racist baby show. They've cancelled it, probably for the best. Now we should just quickly talk about defeating the ideology so we can wrap up. We gotta get back to the is's, because one fringe belief is battling another, and people are being caught in the crossfire, like actual people.
Literally.
So
bullets.
Yeah, people are dying over this, and it's very annoying because when you highlight the ideas that are at war, they're so stupid. And it's very annoying because you would want to hope that there would be enough support in society that say there's enough smart people to think through these dumb ideas and come up with arguments against them, and that for the people who are maybe impressionable, like, young people, or, maybe people who have a little bit more trouble, let's say, a little bit more trouble with the abstractions and thinking through it, that there would be help for them, that you would make sure that, people didn't fall into that, but people keep slipping through the cracks. So we'll go back to what is. And I think this is probably about all I can say on it. 100 years ago, race mixing was generally unaccepted by Western society. Just generally, there was examples of people doing it, examples of people not doing it. Today, race mixing is generally accepted in Western society.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard anyone speak out about race mixing in person. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. I don't know.
For me personally, I haven't even have it come to the forefront of my thinking, even in my personal time. I'm just like, love whoever you fucking want to love. Who cares? Move on.
Yeah. It's annoying that it has to be spelled out, but whatever.
It's good to be spelled out, but yeah.
Yeah. So this means more mixed race babies are being born in response to the removal of those social pressures. If we're going to not have a problem with race mixing, there's going to be more race mixing, obviously.
Yeah.
That's what is. Happy children raised in happy homes is a good thing for society. If you can manage a family that sustains itself across time and that has values that work for the good of humanity, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
We shouldn't do anything that gets in the way of that. Replacement of population can be expressed mathematically as a function of birth rates and immigration. It is unlikely that many families will successfully pass down a rule about non-race mixing through the generations.
Okay.
So it seems to be that we're in a trend where cultures are mixing, hence people are mixing.
Yeah. That's just
what's happening.
That's life.
You can't say it's not happening, and this is the other thing. I don't think you can say it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
There are people who encourage it, but I honestly think a lot of the heavy-handed encouragement of race mixing is done as almost like a counterbalance to the history where it was discouraged.
Okay. Yeah, I see. It seems more natural. Like, it's a natural thing that's happened.
But here's the good thing, though. If you think the Great Replacement is a conspiracy, then you can just go to another country and replace their population.
Yeah, run the same strategy and go.
Yeah. Like, this is what I don't understand about the shooters. I'm like, why would you not just make more white people if that's your explicit problem? Why would you kill people?
Insane. That is absolutely insane. I see your point, though.
It's so funny, though, to think of, imagine going to another country with the explicit goal of replacing the population and garnering enough support to do that. I mean, there's always going to be weirdos who have all these fringe beliefs who think that's what they're actually doing, but it's more like there's just general trends that are in place, and they're taking credit for it.
Okay, yeah.
That'll do, though. I think we've probably spoke about it enough.
See, those is's are definitely easier to use in your mind to see that the thinking on either side is bizarre.
Yeah, and I mean, if this is going to take so many generations, I don't know if it's the kind of thing you should be acting on. I don't know. I hate these. It's such a dumb thing to be obsessed with to the point of killing other people.
Yeah, it seems like a waste. All right, well, I think we should wrap up for this segment on ideology and violent rhetoric and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think let's try to purge ourselves of ideology and focus on real estate.
Focus on individual development.
Yeah.
All right. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and also subscribe. Also, follow down in the link below to an email where you can get a copy of Unify from us as a free trial to try it out to improve and make your life more productive. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a lovely day. Anything else, Aaron?
No, I think that's it.
Also, check out the notes below if you are interested in following up any of the references. Bye!